Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on September 2nd, 2024. We're going to go over the protests that are going on in Israel and do a cursory overview of what's going on in the mainstream media about this topic. It's important to understand that these protests in Israel are gaining momentum. And as of this recording, the court in Israel has told the protests to stop their strike. So what's different about this protest versus other protests in Israel is that the unions now have been getting involved, and they were going to do a massive strike in Israel. So that would shut down many operations in Israel's economy and cause havoc in the society. So there's a little different dynamic that's going on. What the catalyst for this level of protesting and striking in Israel is dealing with the lost opportunity from their perspective of a ceasefire, whereby 6 hostages recently have been killed over the weekend. I think maybe they were killed on Friday. But either way, it was either at the end of the week or during the weekend. I don't remember which. And so they start protesting, the ones that want a ceasefire, some sort of peace deal to get the hostages back. And now the unions are siding with the protesters. This is a different dynamic now. Now, with Netanyahu, he has definitely a war footing that's been going on in Gaza, and now in the northern front, and even in the West Bank, he has this war footing. All right, but he has two constituencies within his coalition cabinet in his government. That is a coalition that is siding with a deal and a ceasefire, and then you have another coalition group that wants to continue the war. So it's not just Netanyahu. It's a little bit more complicated than that. It's Netanyahu and these two coalition groups. All right. On top of now you have a larger society protesting, and now the unions are siding with the protesters. So it's going to evolve, and how this plays out, who knows? It may be the beginning of the end of Netanyahu. We don't know, but I think it's an important piece to capture, because the protesting in Israel at this moment in time, where the soul root of Esau is increasing, the soul root of Jacob is decreasing, and we're moving into the High Holy Day season, which would be in October. October is a very strong month for Esau, not Jacob. There might be some sort of October surprise that goes on with the general election in the United States. And the UN is going to be doing high-level talks on September 24th. Right? I have been saying for months now that I'm concerned with the date September 24, 2024. And that what I'm seeing is, it felt like UN and New York-ish. All right. Then we find out that on the agenda in the UN, that there is some sort of high-level talks that are going to be talking about with world events. All right. I suspect that something is going to be happening during the General Assembly and this special high-level discussion on the 24th of this month, dealing with the crisis in the Middle East. Now, maybe it's wrapped up into a larger issue with the crisis in Europe and the evolving crisis in Asia. I don't know, but September 24th is a key date, all right? And then we go into the High Holy Days, in early October. All right. So this is going to be a tumultuous period of time. Um, will this take down Netanyahu? I don't know. It might. It might. I think it's important to kind of just get an idea, get a pulse on what's going on. I also think this might be an impetus for continued protesting in the United States, especially on campus. So you have the protests in Israel. You have the unions in Israel siding with the protesters now, not the Netanyahu government. And that may feed flames for more protesting on campus. Who knows? I mean, it might get pretty intense in these next few months as we get into we go through the general election in November. We'll see. We'll see. But please, before we start, please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all those. The links are in the description of this video and all my videos. So please click the link and go to the videos and subscribe. Please help support my work. I have thousands of videos that are for free, and it's through the patronage of donations and being paid members on Patreon that allow for those videos to be free. So please go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and donate either through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. You can donate on the homepage of my website. It's really easy. It's at the very bottom of the homepage. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. The link is in the description of this video. By being a paid member, you're helping support my news coverage and allowing these videos to be free for everybody. All right. Higher tiered members do get access, different levels of access to my lectures on pulmonology and immunology. So if you want to help that way too and pay a little bit more, you get extra benefits from being a paid higher tiered member on Patreon, and that way you get access to some of my videos on immunology and pulmonology. So I greatly appreciate your help. Please ask your social media to follow me. That's really important to grow the channel and to reach a larger audience. We are going through tumultuous times dealing with geopolitical events that have a heavy metaphysical component to it. We are going to have perturbations in the financial markets, and I'm going to help you navigate through that. And we also have to understand what is going on with pathogens and how to improve our health and all this stuff. So this is the channel to go to if you want to improve your health, learn how, navigate through pathogenic problems that arise, how to navigate through the geopolitical crisis, and how to navigate through the financial tumult that will arise. So please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. With that said, I just would like to plug one product here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps. This one happens to be lemongrass, but I have 4 other varieties, so I have a total of 5 variety of structural nano silver soaps. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this high quality soap. Get a couple bars for your household. It neutralizes pathogens. It's very high quality. It's way better than Dove. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. With that said, let's start with. Straight to that box. Yeah. Adjust the speaker.
Funeral for Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, the American hostage killed by Hamas in Gaza, will be held today at 9 a.m. Eastern.
Also, President Biden finally returns to the White House after a 2-week-long vacation to meet with Vice President Kamala Harris and the U.S. negotiating team to try and get a deal to get the hostages back.
Oh, good. The A-team's back together. Right. In New York City, thousands gathering at a vigil last night, remembering the 6 murdered hostages found in a tunnel in Rafah over the weekend.
And this is a live look at a protest in Israel calling for a ceasefire and hostage release deal as a massive labor strike causes a standstill at businesses, schools, and Israel's largest airport. Trey Yanks is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Demonstrations erupted across Israel overnight after the country's health ministry announced that 6 Israeli hostages had been executed in Hamas captivity. We know thousands of people blocked the main highway in Israel's second largest city of Tel Aviv. Clashes unfolded between police and protesters, with security forces bringing horses and water cannons to clear the road. The demonstrators demanded their government reach a hostage agreement and bring the remaining captives in Gaza home. Take a look. There are clear disagreements between Israeli leadership, between Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, and the country's prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. For the people here in the streets of Tel Aviv, they are not interested in politics. They are not interested in what the government has to say unless it is bringing the hostages home.
We do know that we want
For many of them, they aren't giving you, for the ones that are protesting and they want the hostages back, and I understand they want the hostages back, but they're not telling you what they're willing to give up. And like I said months ago, almost a year ago, all right, there's a fracturing of the Israeli population. They're fighting, there's a civil war that's going on between the conservative movement, or the more religious crowd, and the liberal crowd. So I'm going to put it, we're seeing something similar in the United States. It's conservatism versus liberalism, all right? Or socialism versus, free market, capitalistic, representative government, all right? So, but we're seeing a fracturing even in our society, in the United States. But in Israel, the metaphysics of this is that this fracturing of the Jewish people is not going to be positive in the world. More destruction is going to happen. This is not going to be just Israel. There's going to be, if the Jewish people continue this fight between these two groups, these two main groups, conservative versus liberal, or religious versus non-religious, all right? It will fracture the society, and there's going to be a curse that comes down, and more destruction in the world is going to happen. This is not going to just be in just Israel. All right, there's a flow of energy that's either positive or negative, or blessing or curse, or whatever words you want to use. And that the makeup of that energy force is going to be based on how the citizenry of Israel conducts itself during these tumultuous times. If you listen to the liberal side of the argument in Israel, they'll say, we want the hostages back, but they're not willing to tell you what the deal is. They want a ceasefire deal. They want a ceasefire. Okay, what are they willing to give up? Because Hamas is going to want to have you give up something, right? So what is it? They don't really go into much detail. So when you get, the devil's in the details, all right? The ceasefire, Hamas isn't going to go, just give us a ceasefire and we'll give you the hostages back. Meanwhile, probably most of them are dead already. All right, so what's Hamas getting? And there's going to be more provisions for, Hamas is going to be forcing more provisions and in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. And if, we know that this is not true, but, if Hamas was all by itself, doing a ceasefire with Hamas doesn't stop Hezbollah. And Northern Front is getting hot and heavy now. So, I'm not sure that a de-escalation through some sort of ceasefire and some sort of hostage negotiation is really going to solve anything. If you ask a liberal, all right, ceasefire for a hostage deal, all right, what are you willing to give up here? Because Hamas is going to be asking for something much more than just a ceasefire. And these liberals don't usually tell you. This is the problem with that side of the argument. The other side of the argument is that they want to totally destroy Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, and move the boundaries to biblical time period. And eventually the Dome of the Rock goes down and the Temple Mount is rebuilt. I am surprised that the red heifers aren't sacrificed yet. I don't understand why that is. And something's not making sense. Why? I mean, I did like 14 videos on the laws and the regulations of the red heifer. I don't understand why it's not. It should have been. So something weird's happening. So, but the point that I'm making is that you have a side that really wants to accelerate this. And the liberal community in Israel doesn't want it. And I would say that, yes, the protests are large, but the conservative constituency in Israel is large too. They may not be protesting as energetically as the liberals, but to say that the liberals are much higher in numbers in the population and will push the government, towards their agenda. You don't see that with Netanyahu because the whole coalition government that he has, it's about 50-50. All right. So Netanyahu is kind of caught in the middle. If he goes too far to the conservative side, then the liberal part of his coalition will go away. If he goes and tries to placate to the protesters, the conservative coalition will go away. So it's a lot more complicated. But, so the conservatives are basically saying, kick out the Palestinians, move the borders to biblical times, control West Bank, control Jerusalem, control the Golan Heights, control larger swaths of the Sinai Peninsula, and give Gaza to the Palestinians. That's really what the conservative movement is moving towards. All right. And destroy the capability of Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. The liberal community is basically saying, give more land away. Right. So, and it's interesting. I've been listening to an audiobook by Jared Kushner in his memoir of being in the White House. And he talks about, and it's really important, I'll tell you, reading or listening to memoirs of department, Secretary of State or presidents or, historians, of this modern time period that we're going through. There's some really interesting information that they put in their memoirs that you don't really fully understand behind the scenes. And Kushner talks about how they were trying to create this Abraham Accord and moving the embassy to Jerusalem, and how Tillerson didn't want to do it. And how presidents kicked the can down the road every 6 months and just kept the embassy in Tel Aviv. And then eventually Trump was convinced to do it. And all that behind the scenes wrangling, how the State Department didn't want to do it, how the national security state really didn't want to do it. They wanted to keep it just, status quo. So, there's a bigger theme going on here. There's a larger theme here. Now, if you step back and look at it from the metaphysical point of view, like I said, the soul root of the United States is not homogeneous. It's heterogeneous, but it's not equally heterogeneous. What I mean by that is the soul root of the United States is largely Jacob, but it does have Esau in it. All right. And we can align ourselves with Esau, or we can align ourselves with Jacob. If we align ourselves with Esau, we're going to be the United States will be cursed. If we align ourselves with Jacob, the blessing will happen for the United States in the long run. Now, as the curse happens to Israel because of this fracturing of its society, right? There's going to be a curse that's going to be coming down on Israel because of this fracturing between the conservative and the liberal. That curse going through the soul root of Jacob is going to manifest itself in the United States. If the United States has more alignment with Jacob, if it aligns itself with Esau when the curse is coming down to Israel, because it's going through the soul root of Jacob, but the United States is more aligned with Esau, it's not going to be as cursed. All right. Now there's a further complication. As these things start to evolve and the environment in the Middle East gets worse in terms of military action, what's supposed to happen according to Kabbalah is that the soul root of Esau splits. And there's a part of Esau that actually aligns itself with Jacob and Ishmael. The other side that doesn't align, and they stay on the soul root of Esau, they get killed off. So there's a teshuvah, there's a repentance that takes place with the soul root of Esau, and it splits. So those people that are aligned to Esau split and go to Jacob, and the positive Esau with Jacob and Ishmael work together to kill off the negative Esau. Now, that's what's going on in the Middle East. Now, in the United States, something similar is going to happen. You're going to have you're going to have in the population an Esau group, a soul root of Esau that splits. It's not going to be tomorrow, but this is going to happen and align itself to the ones that are aligned with Jacob. And then the negative Esau will get killed off. So we're going to actually see not just a warring in the Middle East, we're going to see a warring in the United States and a warring in Europe. You're going to see these Muslims that moved into the European area. A good percentage of them will stay Esau negative, but some of them will move to Esau positive and align itself with ones that are from the soul root of Jacob. All right. So there's an added complexity to the soul root of Esau. Now, I know no international textbook is going to explain it like I did. They don't use the terms. But the thing is that Jacob, Esau, and Ishmael. Ishmael is going to align itself with Jacob. Esau is going to be split, and the negative Esau will be exterminated. That's how it's going to play out. But there's going to be a lot of destruction, a lot of turmoil. And it's not just going to be in the Middle East. There's going to be in the United States, and it's going to happen in Europe. I haven't really thought enough to understand which countries within Asia are aligned with Esau or aligned with Jacob or aligned with Ishmael. I really don't know. I don't have a good handle on it. My gut feeling is that there's going to be a higher composition of Esau and less composition of Jacob within those countries. But I really have to think about it a little bit more for the Asian theater, but definitely for the Middle East, European, and the Americas. This thing's going to get really bad. All right. So this fracturing you're seeing of Israel, this is pretty deep what I'm saying here. The fracturing of the society through the protests because of the hostages and forcing a peace agreement, a ceasefire agreement, is fracturing Israel, the soul root of Jacob, pushing in a curse. Now that curse is going to transmit into the United States. It's not going to be good. Now, be careful what you wish for. All right. You think that protesting and trying to kick out Netanyahu and all that is the great thing. Be careful what you wish for, because it may get a whole lot worse. With that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. This helps to bring down LDL levels, raises HDL levels, that improves your lipid profile. This is great for improving your cardiovascular health. Also, omega-3 is useful. It prevents the red blood cells from sticking too much, which is what people are worried about since the 2020 crisis. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3 to help to improve your cardiovascular health. And by maintaining a good lipid profile, you don't need to take statins. That's an important feature.
Now, because those people were supposed to be home yesterday.
The unrest about the hostages shifted to civil protests with a broad general strike announced today. Israel's international airport was on strike for 2 hours this morning, affecting incoming and outgoing flights. Other transportation affected as well, including Jerusalem's light rail train. With frustration growing across Israel about the lack of a deal, President Biden will meet with Vice President Harris in the Situation Room later today to meet with the American negotiating team. Officials in Washington will look for a way to move the ceasefire talks forward, giving both Israel and Hamas an exit ramp to end the war. The uncertainty about Gaza comes as Israel launched fresh strikes against the Iran-backed group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon overnight. The war inside Gaza has been ongoing for 332 days, and at this point, diplomacy has failed. Guys?
Trey, you have relationships in Hamas in the sense of reporting. Before October the 7th, you were embedded in there. You've talked with some of the members there. They've even presented you with a PowerPoint. I guess my question to you is, after reading everything, after hearing from some of your sources denying October the 7th, do you find the Hamas officials to be honest brokers in this negotiation?
Lawrence, the short answer is no. And look, Pete made a great point earlier. Israel's not negotiating with a rational or reasonable actor. Hamas is an organization that has controlled the Gaza Strip since 2006. At this point, it's very splintered, and there's really one man at the very top, Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind behind the October 7th massacre. The other two masterminds are dead. And so as the Israelis move forward with these conversations, they are getting feedback from Hamas indirectly as part of these negotiations. And
now remember what I said just a few minutes ago about the fracturing of Esau, the positive Esau and the negative Esau. All right. You're seeing the fracturing even within Gaza and Hamas. All right. With these negotiations, Arafat and the one that's leading Hamas now, they just want to be billionaires and live a billionaire life. They don't care about the Palestinians or the Gazans because they're in a position. They hold their position as long as there is conflict with Israel. The moment that there's no conflict with Israel, they lose power. So there's an incentive for this negative Esau to continue this. And this is what I mean by eventually people will start to really, and it will take time, but people within Gaza, the West Bank, they're going to realize that the soul root of Esau, they're going to realize, oh, I need to turn positive. See, they're in it like in the middle, right? A big part of the population is in the middle. They're not positive or they're not negative. The ones that are running Hamas obviously are negative, all right? But you're going to start seeing the society eventually moving towards the positive and aligning itself with Jacob and Ishmael. And so what that basically means is that the Saudis are going to align with Israel, and Iran is going to align itself with the negative soul root of Esau. So that basically means that Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas are going to be exterminated by Jacob, the positive soul root of Esau and Ishmael. And this is the reason why it's going to be a larger conflict, because these soul roots of Jacob and Esau are in the Western world and also in the Asian world, but I have to think about it a little bit more of the composition of that because it's a little bit different. So, but the thing is that this is not just something in the Middle East. These are soul roots and energy forces that are positive and negative, that give blessing to a nation, give blessing to individuals, or curses to individuals or nations. Now, if you really want to get crazy about the election, in Kabbalah, people that are leaders of countries, their soul, all right, battles in heaven, all right, or different planes, but in one of the planes, I'm not sure which plane it is. I don't think it's Yitzhak, but I think it's in, it might be in Berea, but in the plane, in a higher plane in heaven, for lack of a better term, but a higher plane, the soul roots of potential leaders and current leaders battle. So that means that from the general election in the United States, not only are we having battleground states, you know, to get better electoral votes and all this between Harris and Trump, but the soul root of Trump and Harris are battling themselves in one of these higher planes. And this explains that just near miss of the assassination attempt on Trump. And people would say there was, you know, a hand of God or there was some sort of divine intervention, but it's the battle of these souls in these higher planes. And it just so happened that Trump at that moment in time in the higher plane won out. Now, what is an analog to what we're talking about in biblical text? This is the battle of Jacob with the angel on the ladder. The ladder is going up to heaven. Jacob soul root, all right, battling one of the angels. So this happens. We're seeing it. We understand it at a different level because of the plane that we're on. But there's other things happening that we can't see. We can only interpret or do an inference from the shadow that we're seeing on our plane, on what's happening at these higher plane levels. So for sure, Trump and Harris are battling in heaven. All right, there's a heavenly, and something's going to happen because however it transpires, however this thing transpires in U.S. politics, is going to determine the energy source that this country gets. A positive energy source or a negative energy source. The same thing, what happens in the politics of Israel with Netanyahu is going to determine how much curse it'll get and how much blessing it's going to get. Because it's not about really Netanyahu. It's about the battling of these soul roots. Now, once you zoom out and pay attention, it's about soul roots and not individuals. Then things start snapping together on why certain historical paths are going to a certain way, why they're converging in a certain way. Now, I am positive no one has told you this, all right? But that's what's going on. So be careful what you wish for. Be careful when people are promoting, quote, ceasefire, or kick out Netanyahu, or try to kick out Trump. Be careful what you wish for.
They're unable to find a path forward. And at the same time, critics of Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say that he doesn't want a deal under the current terms. And so we're at an impasse here in the region. And negotiators, not just from the United States, but also from Qatar and from Egypt, say they are reaching really the last ends of these efforts. And at this point, there has been no breakthrough in the talks.
If you're sticking with Hamas, we had a father of one of the hostages, American hostages, still there, come on the program. Obviously, he wants a deal. He wants it.
The negative soul root of Esau has to be exterminated. That's the only way to solve this. And I'm not the only. This has been written down for thousands of years. Thousands of years.
Today to get his son back. But he also said that part of the reason he's for it is that Hamas has been completely decimated as a fighting force, and that's the consensus amongst Israeli intelligence and defense officials. Is that true? If the deal were cut, how decimated is Hamas at this point?
It is true. Most of the Hamas brigades inside Gaza have been destroyed and dismantled since the Israeli ground campaign against the Strip started in late October. But Hamas will always be a fighting force in Gaza and in the West Bank. They will act as an insurgency if there are other forces around that they decide they want to attack. And the West Bank is the perfect example. Hamas doesn't control vast areas of territory in the West Bank, but they launch daily attacks, whether it be attempted bombings or shooting attacks. And you'll see the same thing inside Gaza. They won't have the same fighting force that they had on the morning of October 7th when they were able to send trained brigades of fighters across the border, thousands of them, into southern Israel, but they still will be able to launch attacks. There is a controversy inside Israel, and it has to do with the benchmark that the Israeli government has set for the goals of this country inside Gaza. There were two goals laid out by the prime minister. One, bring the hostages home, and two, defeat and destroy Hamas. The second goal is not possible. They can dismantle the brigades that exist inside the Gaza Strip, but Hamas as an organization will continue to exist, and they will continue to attack Israel in some capacity.
Trey, to that point, at what the ratio of those protesters there are saying, look, we don't want a deal? You know, to the point of everyone's been.
This is the reason why the ones that are in Gaza, that the soul root of Esau that goes positive, are going to help with Jacob and Ishmael to kill off the Esau negative soul root. But we haven't seen that split yet. So can the Israelis completely destroy the ideology of Hamas? No. But the Esau positive soul root can.
That's a deal with the devil. We actually aren't protesting to negotiate with terrorists. We are here advocating for the return of our hostages, and we want militarily a global support. Is there a representation of that voice there?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the demonstrators that were in the streets of Tel Aviv last night and into today represent a portion of this society. There are certainly people, especially in the Likud party, supportive of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who say there should be no ceasefire, that the war should continue, even if that risks the lives of hostages. And that's part of the divide currently in Israeli society, and not just at the civilian level. At the very top of the Israeli government, there have been screaming matches in the cabinet between Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister Yoav Gallant. Gallant wants a deal. He wants to bring the hostages home and then restart the war against Hamas. Netanyahu does not want that type of deal at this moment in the conversations. And so it has created a rift between the leadership of this country and questions about what the prime minister, ultimately the decision maker in all of this, will do in the days ahead.
Wow.
Sorry, thank you.
Sorry.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brighteon Channel.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
All right. Well, that's that. Let's let's play the BBC here.
The anguish of many of the population of Israel, and that's what we.
And groups representing the families of Israeli hostages are holding a general strike to press the government to reach a deal. To free those still held by Hamas. It's already been inflicting some flights on Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, and businesses, schools, and other forms of transport have also been hit. Well, the stoppage is a day after the Israeli army said it had recovered the bodies of 6 hostages who were taken during the attacks of the 7th of October. That led to mass demonstrations in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv on Sunday, with the organisers calling on the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to negotiate a deal with Hamas to bring home the estimated 100 remaining hostages. Sunday's protests were largely peaceful, but some crowds broke through police lines, blocking a major highway in Tel Aviv. Well, our correspondent John Wilson is following this story.
After the biggest protests in Israel since the start of the war in Gaza, with hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating across the country, today a general strike. So thousands of businesses are going to be closed, some schools, universities, government ministries, banks, some bus networks. So we're expecting a major hit on the economy here today in Israel. And the outrage against Hamas is a given, but these protests are not about that. These protests are against the government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is accused of pursuing his own personal political ambitions and his survival in sacrifice of a hostage release and ceasefire deal in Gaza. Mr. Netanyahu insists that the best way to get the remaining hostages out of Gaza is to keep applying military pressure on Hamas. However, many people in Israel don't feel that way, including some of the hostage families. They have accused Mr. Netanyahu of having the blood of their loved ones on his hands. There were chants of murderer at last night's protest. And it's not just the public, it is also within his own government. So we've had reports in the last week of a shouting match between the Prime Minister and his Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant, who says that, in effect, Mr. Netanyahu is blocking this deal with Hamas that the world's diplomats have been pursuing now for weeks and months. As I say, Mr. Netanyahu up to now has rejected that pressure, and he says that it is Hamas who are the murderers and that they will be pursued and punished.
John Donaldson, there, our correspondent, that speaks to the former Conservative MP Alistair Burt, who also served as Minister of State for the Middle East. Thank you very much for being with us. When we look at events in Israel with these protests today, what political effect do you think that might have?
The scale of the protests is certainly unprecedented. There's been thousands of people demonstrating regularly against Prime Minister Netanyahu, firstly for internal political reasons, and then sort of post-October the 7th, lately in terms of his handling of the crisis. But the scale of the protest, the vehemence of it, and the sense that the Prime Minister's strategy after October the 7th of seeking total victory of the elimination of Hamas and the recovery of the hostages has proved to be a failure, because it was impossible He was advised that you couldn't do both, and that advice has been borne out by experience. And the circumstances of the murders of the 6 hostages that have been reported have just increased the.
That's why months ago I said that what Netanyahu should have done was that we'll try to rescue the hostages the best that we can, but we need to execute the war, destroy Hamas, and assume that the hostages will perish, either during the strikes, during the war, or through lack of care by their captors, or assassinations, or whatever. But the war needs to continue. See, that was the reason why they took the hostages, to prevent Netanyahu to go complete war on them. All right? Israel has been holding back for 2 reasons. One, because of the hostages and the whole inner fighting within the population and within his cabinet. And also the United States trying to prevent him to go full war on Gaza. So that Hamas was smart by taking hostages. Now, I haven't heard anything in the last 2 days that I've been doing videos on this subject, with the hostages, the recent hostages being killed and all this, and the strikes now. Not once have you heard that the killing of those hostages was a war crime. Not one. But when the war crimes were happening with the IDF, it's all over the news. Now, the soldiers from the IDF that have done war crimes, they need to be investigated, and if there's evidence of war crimes, they need to be prosecuted, for sure. But where is the outcry in the international community about the war crimes that Hamas did on the hostages? The media is biased against Netanyahu, against Israel, not for Israel. The media, the BBC here, I haven't heard anything about war crimes by Hamas with these 6 hostages that were killed. Now, maybe further investigation will prove otherwise, but my understanding of the facts, the fact pattern, is that those hostages were killed before they were rescued. They were killed by Hamas. Where's the outcry? Where's the outcry by the Israeli community that's on the liberal side that Hamas are barbarians and you have to treat them like barbarians? It's amazing. It's amazing. Now, you're going to be listening to these types of stories throughout the days and the weeks, and it may prevent me from going to sleep. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night formula. This works. You need a good night's sleep to be well rested, to detoxify your body, and to consolidate memory. If you are sleep deprived, you are going to age faster, and you're going to have a weakened immune system, and you're going to be building up toxins. And there are studies that show that chronic sleep deprivation can produce early onset dementia. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night formula. It has tryptophan and melatonin in it. Please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night formula. This will help with getting a good night's sleep and getting your body to detox naturally. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. This helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. How? Olive leaf extract brings down inflammation, so it helps your immune system. And olive leaf extract helps to bring down the LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. so it improves your lipid profile. This is a dual purpose product. I believe in providing dual purpose products. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. You know, like I said with the Goodnight formula, it's a dual purpose. It helps to detoxify your body if you get well-rested sleep, if you're having sleep deprivation. On top of, you need good sleep just to be able to have energy in the morning. So it's dual purpose.
The anguish of many of the population of Israel, and that's what we've seen. Whether it will change Prime Minister Netanyahu's policy is difficult to estimate because he is trapped by some in his cabinet who do not want him to make a deal with Hamas, those are the extreme right-wing ministers, and he himself has set on a course where he can only succeed by delivering what he has already promised, even if it's impossible. So it's very hard to say what the immediate impact on the politics will be.
And you know, even if he was to be swayed by these protests, when activists say that they want a Hamas hostage deal, have they spelled out exactly what they're prepared to concede for that?
Exactly.
Hostage families and friends in Israel that I've spoken to, and many people have said they just want the hostages back. The terms of the deal are of less consequence at present than physically returning those hostages that are still alive, and sadly the remains of those who are not. And the desperation that was evident in the faces and the comments of the families over the weekend. The assumption is it will be a deal for return of Palestinian prisoners being held by Israelis both on the West Bank and elsewhere. But the actual terms of the deal seem to matter less to people protesting than just the desperation to get the hostages back. And they feel strongly that
doesn't that sound like most protesters? They protest against something, but they won't tell you what they're for, or sometimes why they're against what they're, why they're against what they're protesting. All right, and that's a common feature of these protests. You ask someone that has Trump derangement syndrome why they have it, they can't really articulate why. It's just orange man bad. They don't have a real good reason. When they had the encampments at Harvard, and you ask them, why are you protesting? Right? It was, they wanted, Palestine to be free. Right? But you ask them, why? Why should Palestine be free? They couldn't tell you. Well, they deserve it. It was taken away from them. If you can't secure your land, if you can't fight for your land, you don't deserve it. It's the same thing with your civil liberties. If you don't protect your civil liberties and fight for them, you don't deserve them.
Allocated to getting the hostages back has not been the priority of Prime Minister Netanyahu and the government, hence the vehemence of the demonstrations and the anger of Defence Minister Yoav Gallant at the way in which the coalition is handling the crisis at present.
And it's obvious as to why sort of family and friends of the hostages will absolutely prioritise that, but the government also has to balance the future security of Israel as it sees it.
That is right, but everything since October the 6th has changed. It would appear that the security of the state of Israel, which Prime Minister Netanyahu and his supporters had predicated on dividing the Palestinian leadership community, supporting Hamas covertly in Gaza, preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state, has fallen apart. And the anger in Israel is directed at the failure of that overall political security policy, as well as the atrocity that took place on October the 7th, for which Hamas bears complete responsibility. So the wider security of Israel is indeed in question now, and that calls for a different political solution, which will require Israel to think of an overall settlement, which will involve the West Bank, East Jerusalem, as well as Gaza, and it will require the abandonment of those who believe that the extinction of the state of Israel is still possible. So a lot of political change is necessary in order to secure the peace and security of Israel, to which it is entitled, as well as the self-determination of the Palestinian people and justice for them. It is not impossible, and negotiations have always faltered when they've got very difficult. But if there was ever a time to press the case, it's now.
Alistair Birch, thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Bob works for a company that's using NordLayer's new solution, Cloud Firewall. He can now easily secure his organization network and manage employee.
Al Jazeera.
And if this threat
Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich is trying to put a halt to the general strike. He's asked the Attorney General to impose a ban, saying the industrial action will have significant economic consequences. Opposition leader Yair Lapid has called for a complete government shutdown. Well, joining me now on set is Tamer Karmout. He's Associate Professor of Public Policy at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. And so here we have the head of Israel's trade union joining forces with the families of the Israeli captives in Gaza. How significant a development is this?
Mariam, it's very significant because we're talking about the unions. Israel is a very proud state with a very strong history or visible history for unions in its establishment and creation. And unions are an umbrella for all political parties, for all citizens. So when unions take such a decision, it means that there is a broad force, a broad spectrum of the Israeli society is backing it or supporting it. So I think it's significant because unions can really cause serious troubles for Netanyahu. These are not political parties. These are bigger than political parties, and they can mobilize more people behind them. And if this strikes continues and gains more momentum, we could see some serious divisions in the Israeli government, and Netanyahu will not be in an easy corner at all.
So it's too early to gauge whether the protests and the general strike poses a threat to the government?
Correct. It's too early. It's yet to be seen because so far we have, what we see is the estimates are like 500,000 demonstrators. But if the numbers grow and most importantly continue, we could expect some pressure on Netanyahu, serious pressure, and then we'll see what will happen.
Is it important to make the distinction within this protest movement? They are protesting the displacement of the Israelis in the north of the country and calling for the release of Israeli captives in Gaza. But is there still this apathy to Palestinian suffering?
I think yes, apathy still there exists, and now the focus more is on the fatigue within the Israeli society, this exhaustion, because this war has lasted for longer than it was expected. It was supposed to be a quick war with quick achievements, but none of this has happened. Of course, the war brought catastrophic impacts on the Palestinians, but at the same time, to a lesser extent, to Israel. But Israel is an advanced country, an advanced political, economic country, and it's not used to engage in long warfare. Israel, since its creation in the Middle East, has been used to achieve quick military victories and then get back to normality and this sense of normality. But now it's not there. They're not used to engage in these long warfare, and I think it's telling a lot. You see these economic indicators in Israel. Everything is being downgraded. Economically,
do you think is there some way Prime Minister Netanyahu could use it then to his advantage?
It's a tricky thing because yes, he can use it to his advantage in one way. The way he frames the issue. He frames the issue that if we stop now, we will be at a strategic loss as a country in a very volatile region, the way he frames it. But some opponents would say, well, there are other ways to do it, other ways to resort to peace. And when we say peace, it's not about ending the war in Gaza. We're talking about permanent peace to end the last occupation on earth and allow Palestinians to have their statehood, independent state. And I think this is where the center of the debate should be in the Israeli society. And maybe the Gaza war has opened the eyes of many Israeli commentators, analysts, even among the society on this issue. For how long Israel can sustain these wars? I mean, the only shortcut to end this war is to resort to peace. But with the likes of Netanyahu and Sumtrich and this fanatic right-wing coalition, I don't think this will happen. So if Israel to save itself and to resort to this peace in the future, long run, in this volatile region, I think the Israelis need an awakening from within. And but again, we're not there yet. So let's see how things evolve.
Professor Tamer, thank you.
My pleasure.
Before we go to CNBC, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. We're going into the cold season where we're going to probably see an uptick in incidences of influenza. We're going to see an uptick of incidences of SARS-CoV-2, maybe even RSV, maybe even Mpox. It's really important to be prepared. Now, how do you prepare for the cold season? You can prepare by getting the drops and the lozenges that I have on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have blueberry drops in 100 count. I also have a new flavor, cherry, in 100 count, and honey and lemon in 100 count. All right, so please go to the store and get a couple bags of the drops. I also have 2 different versions of lozenges that are slightly bigger than the drops. They are, I have it in Manuka honey or in elderberry zinc. Both of these bags have 21 count. So the moment you have an irritation for your throat, right? Take a lot of lozenges or take the drops, okay? Really important. The moment you start feeling that irritation, and what happens is that these are made from structural nanosilver. So it's going to neutralize the pathogen. You're going to create the secretion around this irritant, a chemical irritant, antigen, or pathogen, and it'll neutralize it. And you're creating secretions and protecting that mucosal barrier. That's important because if that barrier is disturbed, if that barrier is weakened, you have a higher chance of getting an infection during the cold season. So it's really important to maintain good mucosal barrier in your oral cavity. And the moment you start feeling an irritation because of spraying for mosquitoes or the chemtrails, or even during the cold season, the moment you feel that irritation, take the lozenges or the drops, all right, and it will neutralize that and mitigate the issue. So you should have a couple bags of these at your house. So right when you need them, you have them. It's really important. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges and the drops. In addition, I also have the structural nanosilver gel. You put this on your skin, it'll neutralize pathogens for 5 hours. You can put it around your face, around your nose, around your ears, around your eyes. You can lightly coat your nostrils. You can apply it on your skin as a skincare, a daily skincare. You can also put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn and help to heal it. So this is a dual purpose product. So please go to the store and get the structural nanosilver gel. You're gonna need this for the cold season. And if you have an outbreak of in your community of Mpox, I'd start using the structural nanosilver gel every day. All right. Oh, I want to play the CNBC. Come on. I lost it. Maybe I can find it again.
The Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich is trying to put a halt to the general strike. He's asked the Attorney General to impose a ban, saying the industrial action will have significant
I lost that one. So I'm going to play. All right, this is Fox News.
Well, Israel's And former FBI Special Agent and Navy SEAL Jonathan Gilliam. Jonathan, we reported Biden and Harris meeting in the Situation Room in a matter of hours. How much faith do you have in Biden and Harris to bring the remaining hostages home?
I don't put faith in Washington D.C. politics. I put faith in God, but when it comes to especially Biden and Harris, if we look at what they've displayed historically, they're going to push out some sound bites. They're going to make claims to appease their voters, but not to upset Israel too much. And I don't think anything will occur. If there's airstrikes or if Iran tries to attack Israel through the air, perhaps the United States will lend a hand there. But I don't think anything's going to come out of this. They don't want to risk it. They've shown that they don't risk force.
The Biden-Harris administration is worried because the Harris campaign for the general election is worried that there's going to be civil unrest in the United States. Because if they're protesting in Israel, then don't you think that there are going to be pro-Palestinian or pro-Hamas protesting on U.S. campuses like Harvard, Cornell, or some of the others? They're just getting back. The school year just started. So there's a big chance that there's going to be protests at the campuses. And it's going to hurt, it potentially may hurt the Harris campaign because they're going to say, these protests are going to say, well, you're Genocide Joe, and Harris, you've aligned yourself with Israel during the CNN interview. So she's in a precarious situation. And so they're going to try to de-escalate that potentiality of protests in the United States. This is what I'm saying. What's happening in Israel is coming home in the United States.
In the wake of a political election or any type of politics. So I don't see much coming out of their meeting except for sound bites.
Okay, with that in mind, how responsible are Biden and Harris for the situation in Israel unraveling the way it has?
Well, I think when we look at the 50,000-foot view of this entire situation, Todd, what we see, especially when you hear the reports coming from the AP about who's protesting over there, and it's interesting when you read the AP because they've moved further and further left, they make it sound as though it's a nationwide protest or strikes that are going on in Israel, but it's union workers, it's students, it's people who are on one side of a divided political election time in Israel. It's just like in the United States. So I'd have to say what's happening over there is very similar to what's happening here, where politics and emotion have divided the people. And the way that they look at these critical issues is through election and through, campaigns and through appeasing these protesters instead of doing what's effective. That's very dangerous. It's been very dangerous, and that's what was happening on October 6th of last year. That's why Israel got attacked, and that's the way the United States is right now. So I would say that President Biden and Vice President Harris, and the way that they have confronted Iran, the way they've given Iran money and freedom, set up Hamas and set up Hezbollah to make these attacks and to let Hamas carry out the hostage taking of all these individuals and then killing them. And there's no response ever from the United States. Iran never suffers. Hamas has only suffered because Israel has turned on them, and the same with Hezbollah. But overall, the United States has set back for the past 4 years and allowed Iran to grow stronger and stronger with no repercussions.
There are some that are saying the hostage executions and subsequent protests / strikes that we just saw on our screen, that they're going to be the turning point. But listening to your last couple of answers, it doesn't sound like you agree with that. Your thoughts, Jonathan?
Well, Israel's a divided population. There's many people who support the total victory plan of Netanyahu, and then there's a large group that supports a ceasefire in the hopes that they'll get hostages back. But Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, they've all shown, all their proxies have shown that never works with them. If you appease them, then they will take advantage of it. If you use force, they take a step back. So any type of ceasefire with Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas is only a temporary fix. They have to be shown force. But the problem with the total victory plan is that it's a response plan. It came after October 6th. And when you have a plan that comes as a result of an attack, that plan is never quite perfect the way it should be, especially in a political season like this. And I'll say one other thing, Todd, about this. If President Trump gets elected, and I hope that he does, I've always been a supporter of Trump's, he needs to surround himself with effective experts who understand these problems and do not feel the need to appease. He can manage that appeasement, but he does not need to surround himself with advisors and counselors that appease these protesters and this social media movement that's gone around in support of terrorist groups and has forgotten our allies. President Trump, when he gets elected, hopefully he does, he will remember that, and he won't pick Washington, D.C. satellites like Bill Barr and these other individuals who've always been around Washington, D.C., or generals and admirals who will turn around and stab him in the back. He needs real experts who work on the ground, that are operationally sound, and will not tell him what he wants to hear, but tell him what he needs to hear. That's what needs to happen in Israel with Netanyahu, and it needs to happen in this country when President Trump is elected.
Jonathan T. Gilliam, coming at you strong here on a Labor Day morning. We appreciate it, Jonathan. Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News.
Yeah, I think I just found
Jonathan.
the
Well,
CNN or the CNBC. Here we go. The CNBC video.
Hulu Plus Live TV has over 95 channels.
Yes! Step into that surprise!
Live news, local channels.
You got it. Together. Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, all in one plan. Wow!
Just tell me right now, where are you striking and why? Of course, the situation at the airport in particular and on the ground is unclear. So help us understand what's happening at the moment.
Thank you. Good morning. Indeed, we have begun our strike at 6 a.m. this morning across private and public sectors. I would say at this stage, we are currently seeing from Beersheba in the south up to Haifa in the north, impact in both in municipalities or in the port of Haifa, in the, of course, Ben Gurion Airport. We're seeing other public transport also affected currently, and it basically crosses, as the name would imply, a general strike. The economy in a general, full-encompassing perspective. But what we are concerned about is, I would say, two core things. First of all, clearly the impact of the war on the economy of Israel is devastating. We are worried for the jobs of the workers and obviously where the government is leading us. And secondly, as Dan rightly pointed out at the opening, when we saw the images and the reports yesterday of 6 hostages that up until a few days ago were alive and were executed by Hamas, we have serious concerns about what is dictating the negotiations. We have a very clear perspective that people need to come first. That is what we do in our union work, and that's what we expect from the government to do in bringing home the hostages. The hostages need to come home, and they need to come home now.
Peter, of course, we're monitoring the economic impact of all of this and the disruption that this is causing on the ground in Israel. How do you respond to critics who say this strike is going to harm the economy and it lacks a legal foundation?
I would say 11 months of us sitting on the sidelines, giving the government all of the room to operate, giving actually faith in the government. It's not easy to declare a general strike in the midst of a war, but obviously, the legal foundations are there. It will be battled out today during in the next couple of hours in the court process. That's what we will be facing. We believe we have a strong case We also believe that the government needs to get the hostages home. They need to do everything to bring those that are alive, to create a deal that will create a ceasefire that will bring the hostages home. That needs to be priority number one. The hostages and their situation is immediately impacting our economy. It is impacting how the cost of living here, the credit that Israel is getting, and you know, this is from our perspective. It's gone on for too long, and that's why we are striking today. Hopefully, the government will listen. We expect them to listen. The fact that they're taking us to court means we've got their attention, rightly so. And we need to, you know, this can go either way. The government can decide to come forward to negotiate in good faith with, in order to bring home the hostages. And we can try and get in a situation where we can get back to normal. The reality is one where Israeli hostages, the hostages being held by Hamas, they need to be priority number one. Those that are alive need to be brought back. They've gone through 11 months, almost 11 months of this. It needs to be put to an end.
Just tell me right now, where are you, Jonathan?
Well, Israel's a divided population. There's many people who support the total.
All right. All right. This is the. Same video. All right. This is Hamas. This is
To Hamas, we speak to a
Al Jazeera.
Sorry, do you remember the first time I think you know it?
Before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. And get the new product that I have on my store, vitamin K2, MK7. This helps with your bone health and your cardiovascular health. It's very important to take every day. So I now have it on my store. Please take it. It's follow my protocol on how to improve your bone health and also your cardiovascular health. You take K2, MK7 every day. Natto kinase, also a new product on my store. You should be taking this. This helps with breaking up clots because it's fibrinolytic, but also at higher doses, it will bring down LDL and raise up your HDL levels. So with taking natto kinase at higher doses, you're going to be able to control your cholesterol. That's important because if you control your cholesterol by doing cardiovascular supplementation, taking natto kinase and taking omega-3s, what you're going to be doing is you're bringing down your LDL levels, you're going to be increasing your HDL levels, you're controlling your cholesterol, and that means you don't have to be on a statin. Right? You don't want to be on a statin. Statins are bad for you. All right. If you pay attention to what I'm doing to improve my health and slow down the aging process and boost up my immune system and improve these different organ systems in our body, like the liver and the heart, the kidney, the brain, right? Your endocrine system. When you do that, you're going to slow down the aging process. You're going to have more vitality, and your immune system is going to be better. So please go to my store and get the natto kinase. This will break up blood clots, and also it will help with controlling cholesterol levels at higher doses. It's really important. If you don't control your cholesterol, your physician is going to try to get you on a statin. Statins are bad. You don't want to be on statins.
Largest trade union says it wants to pressure the government of Benjamin Netanyahu into signing a Gaza ceasefire and captive release deal with Hamas. The action was called after the bodies of 6 Israeli captives were recovered from a tunnel in southern Gaza on Saturday. Well, the strike follows huge protests in cities across Israel on Sunday night. Tens of thousands of people rallied in Tel Aviv in some of the largest demonstrations since October the 7th. Police have made dozens of arrests. The protesters are demanding a ceasefire deal to release the remaining captives in Gaza. And Hamas has blamed Israeli airstrikes for those deaths. of these 6 captives, whose bodies were recovered on Saturday. Israel says they were found with bullet wounds. Dozens of people attended a vigil for one of the 6, Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Pollen. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich is now trying to halt the general strike. He's asked the Attorney General to impose a ban, saying the industrial action will have significant economic consequences. Opposition leader Yair Lapid has called for a complete government shutdown. Well, joining me here on set is Tamer Hammoud. He's an Associate Professor of Public Policy at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Tamer, a very warm welcome to you. Welcome back to Al Jazeera. I think the most obvious question is whether or not these massive strikes, this action that we're seeing in Israel, will have the power to force Benjamin Netanyahu's hand.
Very good question, Neil, but it's yet to be seen. I mean, we haven't seen so many people demonstrating. We're talking about 500,000. I mean, that's a significant number. The key issue here is the momentum. If these demonstrations stay on and the numbers increase, then they could pose a real threat for Netanyahu and his coalition. The unions are an umbrella for all. They're not political parties, but they're an umbrella for all for civilians in Israel by large, and Israel has a very strong unions historically, and they have played key role in influencing public opinion in Israel. So this time the tide is really high. And it would be interesting to see how would Netanyahu deal with such protests, especially that he has a very angry minister in his coalition, Smotrich, who has been threatening the unions, and that is unprecedented in Israel's history. I mean, given what Israel is, it's a social welfare democracy, and unions play a central role in shaping politics and public opinion to a great extent. So to antagonize unions in this critical moment, I think it would be interesting to see how would the larger Israeli public react to it as well. And we are at this juncture now where things could, I mean, the direction could change against Netanyahu as well at some point, and we'll see how things will evolve.
Is there any precedent for scenes that we've seen played out across Israel when it comes to a general strike on this level in the country? Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu has been under a huge amount of political pressure dating way before October the 7th, but anything like this?
Not in Israel's recent history, and I think, as you rightfully say, these tensions or these divisions among Israeli politicians, I think Israeli society, they come before, or they started before the Gaza war. And the Gaza war more or less has increased these divisions over issues that has to do with, of course, Netanyahu's government handling of the war and its outcomes, and the repercussions on the Israeli society, politics, and economy. There's a huge fracture in the Israeli society, and many Israelis worry about the future and nature of the Israeli state. Where is it heading? In what direction? Israel has been established on very strong secular foundation. This particular government has really taken Israel, or hijacked Israel in a different path, where Israel is gradually losing such secular identity, and this worries many Israelis who are not in agreement with the way this government is handling matters inside Israel. So again,
this is what I'm talking about. This battle in Israel between the liberals and the conservatives, or the religious and the ill-religious. Israel, the state of Israel, wanted to secularize Judaism and prevent some of the traditional Judaism and the following of the Torah. Israel proper, all right, the government and its citizens wanted to water that observant level down, all right? So there is this battle that's taking place now between the liberals and the conservatives. And you're seeing it even at the cabinet level, all right? And these coalition cabinet level with Netanyahu, you have a battle between the conservative movement and you have a battle between the liberal movement. You're seeing this in the United States too. A more conservative mindset for the country, where it's free markets, it's God, country, and family, versus liberalism, where it's socialism. It's about secularism. It's about atheism. It's about a lower affinity to country. It's about the destruction of the family unit. Right? So you see these battles that are taking place here. So do you think that the world is better moving towards a socialistic mindset? With a very liberal bend that's not about God, country, and family? Or do you think that society needs to be strengthening God, country, and family? Now, I think that conservatism is better for Western democracies, not liberalism. But the thing is that if you have too much control by the religious, and not enough, and you're preventing freedom, then that's a problem. But I think that the juncture that we're in Western politics, in Western psychology, we have swung the pendulum way too far in secularism, and that pendulum needs to swing a little bit towards the conservative effort. There needs to be conservatism. There's the idea of balanced budgets and strengthening the family unit and affinity to country, and to have spirituality in the society. Those strengthening those pillars probably will strengthen our inner cities and allow for those cities to become vibrant again. And there will be an economy that starts to churn. And when there's safety and there's a rule of law, then more businesses, come into the community. When there is lack of law, there's no law and order, then businesses don't invest in the community. And it's a downward spiral. So I think having a conservative bent is probably better for Western democracies. So you're seeing this battle that's going on, And like I said early on in the video, the soul root of Jacob is battling itself within Israel with this whole liberal and conservative movement. And and as they're fighting each other, there's going to be a curse that comes down on Israel. But that curse on the soul root of Jacob, especially in October, is going to affect the soul root, the Jacob soul root within the United States. We are going to get that negative energy force that's happening with this flux. Like I said before, a couple of years ago with the whole Ukrainian war, these conflicts, they're like crystals, all right, or they're like molecules, ionic bonded molecules. You pull them apart and it creates a tension because they want to go into a steady state. So you're pulling the positive and the negative, and there's an energy in between. But if you reduce the pull, then they snap back together, right? So right now there's this energy force, this tumult in society because of this positive and negative pull, all right? Or the liberal and the conservative pull away from each other, and there's this energy force that's taking place. And there's going to be strife and conflict, and then all of a sudden they'll snap back together and move into stability. It won't have that same level of chaotic energy.
numbers matter, momentum matters at this point. So if the numbers keep growing and the momentum keeps going on, I think Netanyahu will be in a very narrow corner. And if hopefully this also is accompanied by some pressure from the US using its leverage, when I say pressure, genuine pressure this time, not shows, like, you know, maybe he will have to get out of his narrow corner and change the discourse of his politics.
All right. Tamer Kamut, many thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Well, Udi Goran is a leading member of the Hostages and Missing Families Forum. He joins us now from West Jerusalem. Very well.
Before we go to the next segment on Al Jazeera, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video, and get the NAD+. I take this every day to help boost up my energy. It's synergistic with niacin and also NMN. So this helps to boost up those energy levels. NAD+ also helps to repair damaged DNA. As we get older, our DNA gets damaged and we need a little bit of help to repair it. And that way, by repairing damaged DNA, you're preventing cancers and you're preventing age-related problems with your cells and your tissues. So go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD+ to boost up your energies and repair your DNA. Our DNA also gets damaged, not just by getting older, but by the chemicals that are around us. So the bug spraying that's going on with the mosquitoes, that's going to cause damage to your cells. It's going to affect your endocrine system, the spraying, and affect your immune system and cause damage to the DNA. So it's really important to take NAD+ to help heal that DNA, all right? In addition, NAD+ helps with protecting neural health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get NAD+. Protect your neurons, boost up that energy level, and repair your DNA. Really important. This is taking lessons learned from the anti-aging and the longevity subculture to be able to boost up your body and to slow down that whole aging process. Right? This is a compound that anti-agers take all the time. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD+. Ubiquinol, the active form for CoQ10. CoQ10 is an antioxidant. It also helps with boosting up your energy levels, so it's synergistic with NAD+. In addition, it will help with neuron health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take the Ubiquinol, which is the active form of CoQ10. This is a new product on my store. I've been taking Ubiquinol for many years, and now I can provide it on my store so you can add it to your stack. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Ubiquinol. It's very important, helps boost up your energy levels, helps with the mitochondrial health, helps with your neurons. It's an antioxidant. If you'll notice, there's a pattern, and I keep on saying, bring down inflammation, boost up your energy levels, improve your mitochondrial health, bring down those free radicals, neutralize pathogens. These are major pillars from the whole anti-aging and longevity subculture. And this knowledge can be translated into just everyday supplementation to improve your immune system, to improve your health, to improve your energy levels, so you can be more vibrant. Now you couple that with things like proper diet, proper exercise, filter your water. You need to stretch. You need to do balancing exercise, and you need to train your mind. You need to read, write, and talk to people in the real world. Smart devices have been documented to lower IQs and lower attention spans. So, overuse of iPads and iPhones, smartphones, and overuse of computers and stuff like this actually makes you stupid. That's what the research is showing. So if you have a child, they're starting to develop neurologically and they're learning things, as like a sponge, and you put them in front of TVs and smart devices and all these things, they're not getting smarter, they're getting dumber. So, be careful about the overusage of these smart devices as adults and as children. Very important because attention spans are going down, IQ levels are going down, creativity is going down. So you need to challenge your mind. That's another pillar. And when you do all these things, you'll be amazed on how your body changes over time and gets better and improves. And you will start seeing that your body is at a better level than it used to be, and your body is better than the control group, which are maybe friends, family, coworkers, whatever, that aren't doing the same things that you're doing in terms of improving your health. So follow my advice: proper diet, exercise, balancing, train your mind, mindfulness, filtering your water, proper supplementation.
Welcome to Al Jazeera. So I understand that you have just been at the Knesset speaking to members of parliament. What are they saying to you?
We are actually coming here every single week to speak to them, speak out in the committees, and make our voices heard in the House of the People. I'm still in the Knesset, and we will be here for a few more hours. What we hear from them, it really, different. It differs whether it's out in public or it's behind closed doors. And, we keep being here in order to make sure we influence them to call out, to make the right decisions when it comes to the hostage deal that's now on the table and influencing the prime minister. And I think the analysis you just heard was very accurate. I mean, Netanyahu is very, very stubborn in his position at the moment. And this is why we are trying to influence not only him, but also the ministers and the parliament members around him to do what we feel is right. Save the people, save the hostages.
How receptive do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is to demonstrations on this scale? We're talking about 500,000 people across Israel here. He has a tendency to bide his time and wait things out, but it's something different this time.
I think that he is the most experienced politician in the Israeli arena at the moment. And he's been through this many times. And this is why I say we are not only trying to influence him, we're trying to influence other parliament members, we're trying to influence the Israeli public to make the public's voice heard. At the end of the day, and I think it's very symbolic that I'm speaking to you from the House of the People, the Israeli Knesset, which should represent the will of the people. And by any kind of poll that has been presented in the past 3 months, the vast majority of Israelis want to see an end to this war with the hostages back home.
Anudi, you know all too well about what's at stake here.
End of the war with the hostages back home, but it's kicking the can down the road because we've had similar situations like this in prior years, where there were some hostages and there was, an incursion and destruction in Gaza, and then there's a ceasefire. Now, for sure, after October 7th, this military operation that's going on between Hamas and Israel is more bloody and more destructive, for sure. But the thing is that it's getting more bloody and more destructive every time there's a startup of the tensions and the war, and you reboot it. And what's happening is that the capability of Hamas is increasing. And not only that, Iran is reaching towards nuclear weapons. And we have now unconventional means, biologics and chemicals, that are, the barriers of entry are very low. So you have a whole new dynamic going on. So if you keep on kicking the can down the road, it's going to get worse. So this concept from the liberal, all right, saying we want the hostages home. Okay, I understand. And we want a ceasefire. Well, that's just only going to kick the can down the road where the situation is going to get even worse, where potentially there's more hostages later down the road, or there's more Israelis dead because of unconventional warfare, or more capability with drones and these rockets from Hezbollah and Hamas. So no, just because you try to save hostages, let's say 100 are left, most likely there's not 100 left. There's probably far fewer than that because they probably have passed away already. But let's say these 100 hostages that are left. You kick the can down the road for 2 years, all right? And now let's say Hezbollah and Hamas build up capability not to kill just hundreds of Israelis, but thousands of Israelis day after day after day, instead of killing Hamas and destroying Hezbollah. So you saved 100 people only to lose thousands of people later on the Israeli side. Does that help? And then the Israelis will kill tens of thousands of Palestinians. So there will be more war and destruction and death if you kick the can down the road. So it's better to get it done. It should have been done years ago, and there would have been less destruction and less death, and it would have been easier, and it would have been cheaper. But what's happening is it's getting more expensive, more destruction, more death on both sides. So it seems on the surface as a great policy. Ceasefire for hostage exchange. But the reality of the situation is that Hezbollah will do this again. It will do it again. And they're going to have more capability and potentially even unconventional warfare. Then what do? You save those 100 people, but you basically set in motion thousands of people dying from unconventional means. Maybe even millions. Was it worth it? No, it's not. When you look at the whole, if you look at the total cost to finalize something, it's better to do it now than to kick the can down the road. All you got to do is look at the data points of each one of these escalations. How many people died from each side? How much did it cost? And it keeps on going up and up and up every time this tension gets rebooted in the Middle East. You got to solve it. You got to end it. And the only way to end it is one side destroys the other. He's wrong. He's absolutely wrong in the long run. In the short run, it saves lives. It saves the hostages. But only more death and destruction and costs will be incurred in the future if you don't get the job done. And that's the problem with the liberal. The liberal wants expediency, but doesn't really understand the long game. And that's the reason why liberals in general aren't very good at project management and aren't very good at building businesses, because you have to have a long perspective.
Well, Cousin Tal was killed on October the 7th. I mean, the Netanyahu government insists on defeating Hamas first. But how much of this is about, in the eyes of many Israelis, safeguarding Netanyahu's political survival?
Many people
I apologize for the disturbance. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. While you correct the shot, let's carry on talking.
Yes.
You were
yes.
saying.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm saying that I think at this point, many people believe that the way that this war is handled at the moment is influenced by politics rather than actual the actual reasoning behind running this war and defeating Hamas. I think that Israel must make sure that its borders are secure. We need to make sure that Hamas cannot carry out an attack like October 7th again. But in order to do so, we need a long-term plan. And this will not happen militarily. The military has done what it had to do, and that is weaken Hamas enough that they cannot hurt us, that they cannot carry out their barbaric attack on October 7th again. And from this point on, it needs to go into the diplomatic ranks.
There may, of course, be very obvious, palpable frictions within.
This is what needs to happen.
As I was just saying, there may be frictions, very clear and obvious frictions within Israeli society. We're seeing it on the streets across Israel, frictions too within politics. But does this in any way signal a change of attitudes towards the rights and lives of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank amongst Israeli people?
I think that, the Israeli liberal camp has been very much speaking about the lives of Gazans. I think that many people in Israel do see that there is a people on the other side of the fence. They do see that not only there is a people, that they're, human beings, but that these human beings will be for the not just near, also far future, the people that we will be sharing this piece of land with. And in order to have a safe home for both people, we've got to learn to coexist. However, we cannot coexist as long as Hamas is in power, because Hamas is a terrorist group.
He's missing the point because he's a liberal. And he probably doesn't follow that much of the Torah. All right? Just by looking at him, I can tell that he doesn't follow much of the Torah. All right? But the reality of the situation is there's going to be a temple that gets rebuilt, and the Dome of the Rock has to go down. How are you going to live peacefully if you, have this some sort of political agreement between the Palestinians and the Israelis that you're going to coexist on the same land when you actually have to take down their fourth most precious religious site? How are you going to coexist in that environment? You have to purge the land of the Palestinians and have them relocate to other regions in the Arab world before that can happen. And again, this is where the Arab community that aligns with Jacob is going to be the Esau positive, the ones that repent and they move towards the positive soul root of Esau and align with Jacob and Ishmael. And then also, you have the negative ones that get totally destroyed. You got to relocate them. So the Ishmael will realize that they have to be relocated for the larger borders to go to the biblical times. And Mecca is more important, not the Dome of the Rock for Islam. All right. So once you reset the borders, then it sets in motion the ability to dismantle the Dome of the Rock and to rebuild the temple. You can't do that with the current situation. Let's say there's all this peace and there's just peace and harmony and there's great economic prosperity between the West Bank and Gaza and Israel and all of its neighbors. And all of a sudden, the Messianic leader comes, shows himself, and the temple gets rebuilt. You really think that the Muslim community within the West Bank and Gaza and some of the surrounding enemies of Israel historically are going to be have a kind hand in allowing Israel to dismantle the Dome of the Rock? Of course not, because this is really a battle between Sunni and Shia. You can't have a temple rebuilt in a peaceful environment when you have a fractured landmass in Israel between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It can't happen. That's the reason why there has to be a war first. And this is just such a liberal mindset. But yet it has been written in religious texts for thousands of years that this is going to happen. You really think that liberalism is going to be able to somehow divert what has been written down for thousands of years? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Only outwards towards Israel. It's also a terrorist group inwards. If we think about what it has done in the past 20 years since it got to power, 18 years since it got to power, it hasn't invested in the people, in infrastructure. It has invested in fighting Israel instead of taking care of its own people. And I believe that, and many people like myself do believe that there's no other way rather than finding a long-standing solution how both people can exist on this piece of land, but it cannot be when the
and this is not discussed very often in the news at all. And some rabbis will talk about this on their podcasts. The reality of the situation is there's about 20, 25 million Jews out there, all right? The far majority of them are not going to make it through the Messianic age. The far majority. They will die. That's been prophesized. That's the far majority of the Jews, like him, will not make it in the Messianic age. Why? Because they haven't done all the preparation and the building and laying the foundation on a religious level and the geopolitics that sets in motion this whole building of the temple. But the far majority of the Jews will not make it. They will die out. Now there's going to be a sect of Jews that will make it through this period. Now this is how it gets into the crazy stuff where you have certain very religious people that take on certain religious pain of others to try to bear to lessen the pain of people like him, because they're going to go through a painful process. But the far majority of the Jews are not going to make it through this process. Maybe I don't even make it through the process. I don't really care anymore. But the thing is that the point here is liberal Jews aren't going to be on the other side of this.
Side is claiming that there's no room to the other side, and that, by the way, is a criticism that I have on both sides of the fence.
Of course, many Palestinians will give as an example the blockade of air, land and sea in Gaza as an example of decades-long oppression of Palestinians in Gaza, not to mention scenes that we're seeing play out on a regular basis in the occupied West Bank as well. If we're talking about a negotiated solution to this, speaking to Hamas seems like the most obvious option right now, doesn't it?
I agree. This is what we need to do at the moment. And yet we need to make sure that when we speak to Hamas, we speak to a Hamas that is willing to live side by side with Israel. Otherwise, there really is no solution. I mean, I don't see any other solution rather than the accepting the fact that between the river and the sea, there is an equal amount of Jews and Palestinians. And as long as one side is denying the existence of the other, then we cannot coexist. And as I've said, this is a criticism that I will carry out to anyone who claims otherwise. But as
That's
Hamas
why
has
it's
it
the battle of
in
it's the battle of the will. This is why it needs to be go full war, and whoever wins wins. If Israel is meant to exist, then it exists. If Palestinian was meant to exist, it will exist. But they got to go full war.
agenda to destroy Israel, then of course in the very near future, we've got to make sure that we reach a ceasefire and that we get all the hostages out, which is the most urgent matter. And then once we start looking into the long future, that's further into the future, we need to make sure that there's a new regional agreement here that Hamas is either willing to live side by side with Israel or is replaced.
Okay, Udi Goran, leading member of the Hostages and Missing Families Forum. Many thanks for joining us on Al Jazeera.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAC. NAC will bring up your glutathione levels. Glutathione is a strong antioxidant. It is synergistic with C60. I'll talk about C60 in a minute here. But NAC brings up those glutathione levels. It's an antioxidant. It'll also help to protect your mental health. All right. A lot of people that have ADHD or they have anxiety, this has a tendency to mitigate some of those issues. So NAC is something they should be taking every day because it's a strong antioxidant. It's synergistic with C60, and it also helps to detoxify the body. All right, so please go to the store, my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAC. I take this every day. It's part of my anti-aging protocol because it brings up the glutathione levels. I have 3 versions of C60, all right? C60 is a very strong antioxidant. You take a teaspoon of it a day, all right, every day. And what it does is it soaks up free radicals. I have it in avocado oil, coconut oil, and extra virgin olive oil, all right? I have it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. The higher ounce configuration, the price per ounce, it's cheaper for you. So there is an incentive to buy more ounces. So, but take a teaspoon of it a day. Why? Because it soaks up free radicals and it's synergistic with a lot of the stuff that I talked about, like the NAC. It's synergistic with NAC. It's synergistic with the ubiquinol. All right, so please go to my store and get the C60. It's a carbon molecule. It's a 60 carbon molecule that will soak up those free radicals. All right, it will neutralize those free radicals. Free radicals cause damage to your cells. So if you're soaking those free radicals up, then you have less cellular damage and your mitochondria will be healthier. You'll have more ATP. Because you have more ATP, your neurons will be better because you need lots of ATP to create neurotransmitters and fire those neurotransmitters. You need a lot of healthy mitochondria in your neurons. So C60 does that. It helps your mitochondrial health. It will, over time, what you'll notice is that you're aging slower and your tissues are performing better and your organs are performing better. So it's really important to take C60 every day, teaspoon every day. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60 in the extra virgin olive oil, the coconut oil, or the avocado oil. So please go to my store and get the C60. It's a great product. It's part of my anti-aging protocol. And by doing that on a regular basis, you're going to be able to boost up your immune system too, because you're building up more ATP and you're making your mitochondria healthier. So that's my broadcast for today. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the plethora of supplements I have and follow my advice. Proper diet, proper exercise, filter your water, proper supplementation. do some balancing exercises and stretching, and train your brain. You need to write, read, and talk to people. These things are really important. When you do them together in a holistic fashion, you're going to improve your body. It's about preventative medicine. All right, you want to prevent problems from arising. I've told you how to improve your cardiovascular health, how to improve your bone health, how to improve your immune system, how to improve your neurons. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.